And welcome to the Down in Front podcast, the official podcast of downinfrontpodcast.com. I'm your host, Warren, on this beautiful day-ish, almost night. We're just going to be hanging out. I'm actually super excited because for the first time in a long time, we are recording in person.
Yeah.
I have the beautiful mouth of the South here in my recording studio. How's it going, Brilund?
Oh, I'm doing well. Thank you for having me over to your humble abode. And I'm happy to be here. And it's been awesome hanging out with you today.
Yeah, I mean, it was probably, we've been hanging out today. We actually did a double feature, almost a triple feature, but Brilund didn't want to see Mamma Mia with me, but that's okay.
What is a Mamma Mia?
What is a Mamma Mia? But we did a double feature today. We actually been talking about what we've been watching, so I'm going to toss it over to Brilund. Says, Brilund, what you sipping on and what you been watching?
Right now I'm sipping on a Sam Adams Porch Rocker, the superior brother of the Narragansett Shandy. So I'll drink this.
You don't have to shit on the shandy. It has nothing to do with anything.
Hashtag shit on the shandy.
Hashtag don't shit on the shandy.
But yeah, what we've been watching. So we decided to do a two for Skyscraper and Equalizer 2. So to get ready, I watched Equalizer this morning, and this was actually like one of my favorite shows as a kid. Where it's definitely one of those shows that had like a minimal budget, so they made the character kind of like this ghost, not necessarily assassin, but person that helps out people that are actually being oppressed or things. And he's like played by an old British guy in a long jacket. He has a black car, and then when you see like thugs beating up an innocent person, you see this car drive up, the brights are on, he steps out, he's in front of the brights casting this looming shadow. Then it cuts to the thugs beaten up and he just drives away. And that's what the whole TV show was. So to see it like modernized, I thought that the movie The Equalizer actually took the concepts of what made the TV show great, like that mystery of this good Samaritan that's taken the law into his own hands. And they definitely modernized it for this day and age, like having Denzel Washington's character McCall be able to like kind of help people day to day with just life values and stuff. I find that really endearing for the character. But then, man, they ramp up the action really well, but they still keep it where he's kind of like a ghost in every single action scene, where he has a stopwatch that he times how he's going to take out all these people. They have this slow-mo vision before he takes out people. And then you see him like do 2 or 3 moves and then like everybody's dead. And it gets crazy. But I found it to be a very enjoyable film for that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I actually just recently watched the first one. Actually, I've never seen it before. So I just watched the first one last week or the week before with my buddy. And I was like, oh, I was kind of bummed because A, is Denzel Washington. B, he's kicking ass. And C, it actually has a positive message. So why am I not like watching this movie? But I thoroughly enjoyed it too. I'm your host, Warren. Today, what I'm drinking is currently also drinking a Porch Rocker. So it's always delicious. And what I've been watching a bunch of other movies and TV shows as normal. It was actually nice to actually get caught up. You know, I watched one of the episodes of Cloak and Dagger, so I'm pretty excited to unlock that a little bit. But I've actually been going back and kind of watching the ESPN sort of detail with Kobe Bryant. He did one with Trae Young, what I thought was really, really cool. Even because there was a lot more focus on the Summer League for some reason this year. So I was ended up watching a lot of the NBA Summer League games, which I thought was pretty cool. And so he did a detail on him. It's about 20 minutes long, nothing too crazy. And that was really, really entertaining just to see that, you know, how this young kid, I think like 19, 20 years old, is not even like fully like in the NBA yet. He could be, right? He probably will. But that's cool just to see him and like give him that impression of this is how to make your game better. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I saw the Jason Tatum one and I thought it was cool that when Kobe does these things, just the like production of him like in the spotlight and the control center comes up.
So silly.
It's ridiculous, but it like kind of works for what it is.
Well, I like it.
But he always refers to himself
Yep.
as the player, which I think is a neat perspective to take. That he's not just saying like, "Oh, so you see how Jason does this." He's like, "I'm moving the ball this way. And the reason why I would do that is because of this. But if I do this, I'm gonna make a mistake, and they could easily steal it from me."
Yeah. I thought it was cool because it's like a pseudo Westworld sort of opening.
Yeah.
And so I didn't pick up on it until recently, probably in the last couple of weeks. I was like, oh, that's like the Westworld introduction. Interesting. I didn't even like kind of like realize that, but that was cool. Yeah. So I've been watching that. I've also been watching a lot of other TV, but we're not going to get into that one stuff just now. But today, we're here to give you a full review of Sorry to Bother You by director Boots Riley, starring Lakeith Stanfield, Tessa Thompson, Jermaine Fowler, and a bunch of other people. I'm going to go ahead and read this IMDb. It says, in an alternate present-day version of Oakland, telemarketer Cassius Green discovers a magical key to professional success, propelling him into a macabre universe. We are probably going to do this a little bit differently, so before we get into our spoiler section, I'm going to cut this. What we're going to be doing is that we're going to do this a little bit differently. We're going to actually start with our spoiler section for right now, so we're going to take a break here and says if you haven't seen this movie, stop the podcast right now, go watch it, definitely come back. I would definitely suggest people to watch this movie overall, just because I think he's going to give you a lot of different points of view, and I think it's also a very creative movie and something you just don't really see before. What do you got?
Yeah. So like this movie, reminds me of a lot of movies I loved to watch in college. So things like A Life Less Ordinary or Michel Gondry films, even like something like Pulp Fiction or Being John Malkovich. It has this thing where the visual style of it is at the forefront, and it's more of like the theme of the tone of the movie and how the characters portray themselves and what they stand for versus any substantial plot to it.
Yeah. So we'll be back shortly for a full review of Sorry to Bother You. And we are back, and we are the Down in Front podcast. I'm Warren. I'm with Brilund. What we're going to be doing is giving you a full review of Sorry to Bother You, with spoilers included. So again, if you haven't seen the movie, you probably don't want to go on for right now. But let's open up. Let's start talking about this movie here. So Brilund, it looks like we want to kind of just open up and have just like a bit of a discussion on this. Mm-hmm. Looks like we kind of base it off of just a couple of things. So we're going to talk about the characters. We'll talk about the visual style and story a little bit. And then we're just going to open up to like any other sort of thoughts that you had, because this was definitely a different movie. Already, yeah. I know that it was tough to see this movie because it didn't start as a wide release, which I think was kind of weird, or unless that's planned. But it definitely is like an independent, and a lot of the trailers in front of it. Although I didn't watch it, but I see at least some of the stuff from there. It was like another also like independent movies that before my showing. I don't know if that you saw that too.
Yeah, it was an independent release, so yeah, it was gonna have. It's one of those things like it'll release small and then get bigger and bigger depending on if it's making money or not. But it looks like it's being pretty successul so far, which is good.
Cool.
Because these type of movies need to be supported.
Absolutely.
And I definitely think it's going to be an interesting movie to talk about because I'll probably have some wins that you might criticize. I might have some criticisms you think are big wins. So it can definitely go either way, and that's what these movies are for, is to have like that discussion and everything. But when it comes to like the characters and acting, I've said this many times before that I think Lakeith Stanfield is amazing, very talented actor. If he in his work in Atlanta or Get Out, I thought he's definitely stands out in those roles that he has. But also for him to have his like first lead role in a movie like this, I think it's kind of fitting for who he is as an actor. He's definitely has like a very existential take on a lot of characters that he creates, and Cassius Green is no different. I do like the character of Cassius Green a lot. He's like a very pragmatic and humble individual that all he knows is he knows he needs a job to make money to keep a roof over his head, and but he also has this naivete because he definitely wants to do as well as possible, and it's actually very telling when he's being interviewed for a job at Regal View that he like makes his own trophies and awards to say like how good he was in his last jobs. That hey, he's got a creative mind to him, and he actually has some ingenuity to him. So he's definitely not going to be like your run of the mill telemarketer. And that's the thing that the interviewer finds appealing of him, is that hey, he's doing anything possible to have this job and want this job, and so showing that hunger and that drive, I think, is an interesting tool for Cassius because it takes him on many different journeys throughout the movie.
I thought that was just such a great opening, just an opening way to like interview, especially for a telemarketer, and how they kind of turned it upside down. But I'm definitely going to kind of agree with you. I really enjoy Lakeith Stanfield a lot, especially in the works that you're talking about, because he's a very, very different character. Even from Atlanta season 1 to season 2, he was making some statements and comments that were, I think, very like almost like mind-boggling, but like also was like very, very deep and like kind of opened up. And even in Atlanta, I think it was something interesting. He went to the gun range, and he went to the shooting range, and he had like a picture of a dog, or it was like some sort of animal that he put up there, and everybody was freaking out that he was target practicing on an animal. He was like, "Well, you target practicing on human beings. Why are you shooting those? You shouldn't be shooting people, right?" And I was like, "That's actually a good point. Yeah, no, that's a great fucking point." But yeah, he's absolutely amazing. He's great in this actual movie itself. I think I really want to see him in more work. I think this year, though, belongs to Tessa Thompson for sure. I know you're talking
she's
about
everywhere.
that. She's everywhere. Westworld, but she's also popping up in like Thor Ragnarok, which I know was last year. But the more pieces of work that she's in, she's also like gorgeous and over 40, and she can still easily pull off the fact that she can be like a
She's over 40?
Yeah, I think she's over 40. Yeah,
wow.
like 43, 44, something like that. But she can easily pull off these roles and still kind of stand her own, and I love her character in this movie. Also has like some really, really cool points about it. I guess one of the negatives, though, is that I really wanted to like learn a bit more about her character. Her character was really interesting. She even has that, she was gonna do her art show, and like even the section of like doing her art show and kind of repeating that same information, I thought that was like very impactful. But we didn't really get a chance to learn a little bit more about her and like some of their follow through. So I think that was kind of a bummer. But it was pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think like the character of Detroit, definitely a very enigmatic character, very full of energy that Tessa Thompson brings. I feel that they use a lot more visual style for the character to represent herself rather than Tessa Thompson, and that's why I felt like it was dialed back a little, that maybe she should have been a bit more prominent in Cash's life.
Mm-hmm.
But she was kind of just like how she played her role in Creed, even though her role in Creed is definitely is substantial, impactful towards Adonis's character as a whole compared to Cassius. And I think just because of all the stuff they wanted to add to this movie, that's why it feels like she doesn't have as much of an impact in this movie here.
Yeah, I guess that's okay. What about Armie Hammer?
Armie Hammer, I love what he's doing here. Armie Hammer is definitely an actor I really like. I've always liked him, like in The Social Network. I love him in what's that movie? The Man from U.N.C.L.E.
Yes,
as the Russian agent. He's fantastic
so
as that.
Yeah.
And here he kind of brings that like blue blood, like upper crust, like voice that he had for the Winklevoss twins back. But it's like if a Winklevoss twin decided to do a lot of crack and just in acid and just like doesn't really understand what reality is all about. And I think that's definitely a substantial like discussion to have, is like when you reach a certain level. We don't know, even when we see him, he's playing Steve Lift, actually the CEO of Worry Free, another company in this movie, that we don't know if he's a self-made man or if he inherited money or anything. We just know he's at this position of power in the country and in the world, that where his world is totally different because he can shape it to be what he wants it to be. And so when that stands out, where his disconnect happens. And so like we see like in real life, like Elon Musk gets flack for like making a company called the Boring Company that's just going to drill holes under the world, or like saying like, oh, I'm going to send my car to Mars type of thing because I am Elon Musk. I mean, I think it's a very exaggerated version of what that is. And the way he takes it, and his ideas, that not necessarily evil, he just sees it as, I think this is the next big thing, literally and figuratively, that he plays it so well. And also like when he is talking to Cassius, and we'll definitely get into this scene a lot. We'll get into this scene a little later, that when he meets Cassius for the first time and how he treats him and stuff. And that's very telling, like when you're different social positions and also economic positions in life, how can you find that disconnect and connect them, is what I always try to perceive and search for. But in this movie, it's like this total disconnection, and he has a perception of who Cassius is, and Cassius is just like, what the fuck?
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good point too. I mean, and talking about some other characters, you have the Mr. Blank character, played by actor Omari Hardwick, which I actually don't know if I've ever seen him in anything else. He looks familiar.
He looked like Jordan Peele to me.
Oh, no.
And I was like, wow, this is Jordan Peele? But no, it's not.
So, I mean, looking at some of the roles he had, he was in Kick-Ass as Sergeant Marcus Williams. I don't remember. Maybe I actually have seen him.
So he's Hit Girl's foster dad at the end.
Yeah, there we go. That's why. Maybe because he also has an eye patch and a hilarious mustache.
Yeah, he has an eye patch, a bowler, a weird mustache. He's wearing suspenders and wingtips, and so he's definitely he has a costume on, so it's tough to.
I guess I was like, I have seen him, but it's interesting because you also kind of mentioned this, and I think we get into this a little bit later, but his character was also very interesting, and as a whole, I was very interested to see what story Boots Riley is trying to tell here, because he wrote and directed it. And coming from, the socioeconomic status or the politicalness of it or things like that really, really had got me going. And I think arguably, and I know Mocha Mike, if he was on here, and even Mike Blewett, they would probably say, what? This will be one of the movies I would say for people to watch the trailer. Because even if you were to watch the trailer, because this movie's out there, even if you were to watch the trailer, it still doesn't give anything of what this movie is about at all. But at least watch the trailer to understand what you're going into, because this movie, I don't think it's for a lot of people, but it's very important that everybody should watch it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. What?
Huh?
What?
It's for everybody. But, I mean, it's cool. So, talking more about the characters, I really like Armie Hammer. I'm glad that he's in, better stuff. I think we saw him the first time in The Social Network, and then he was making some movies that were pretty questionable, and I'm like, oh, bro, just get him in the MCU, or just get him in something that he can be that lead man.
Yeah.
But I've also noticed that he's been a great supporting actor, and he's also a great sort of character role too. I think he's been this was definitely a character role in this movie, and I liked him because he can look like a lead man, right? Like he looked like he would be the star of this movie, but he also can step in and have those supporting roles and still give it his best. So I really like seeing him in this movie a lot.
At one time, he was gonna play Batman.
Oh, that would have been great.
Yeah, he'd make a fantastic
He would
Batman.
be great at Batman.
It's not too late.
I think that would be great. I would love to see him as Batman. I think that'd be pretty cool. I was just thinking, like, I wonder if like he would be playing like Superman or something like that. I don't know. But in any case, what else? Some other characters that stood out for you, Brilund?
I would say like there's some cool trifectas here that I like. So Robin Longstreet, who plays Anderson, Kate Berlant, who plays Diana Dubochet. It's not debauchery.
That looks like debauchery.
Michael X. Summers as Johnny. These type of movies, they definitely need stereotypes to drive them at times to keep the wackiness going. And these three like play some of the best stereotypes of middle management I've ever seen. And you have like different archetypes. I like Johnny's like trying to be like, the guy. He's kind of like trying to be that guy with you in the trenches, but also at the same time he's just visibly like, fuck this job. And he's just trying anyway to like kind of like sacrifice like his position just by cussing at everybody. But also I think Anderson, he was good as just like the apathetic like senior manager just overseeing the call center, and Diana Debauchery being that manager that that's like, hey, we can do it as a team, like the super peppy pep talk manager. And like I've run into like managers that are similar to that all through my lifetime, and it's like, yep. That's what I've been.
Check those boxes off. Like,
check those boxes off. I know who they are and exactly what role they play right now. That's fantastic.
The part that Diana Debauchery's that absolutely had me dying was when she was typing in the password for the elevator.
Yeah.
And I just looked up to see, apparently that's Rosario Dawson's voice is the elevator voice. I didn't even realize. But that part was hilarious. I was like, oh my gosh. I love how they put something in this movie and then it feels like he just cranks it up to like over 1,000. And it says, this is how like hilarious or weird we're going to make this moment. That was pretty cool.
Yeah. And I would say another trifecta that I thought was really good, even though we don't see him on screen, David Cross, Patton Oswalt, and Lily James as the white voices for some of our characters in this movie. They do a great job because, you recognize them like, do I know that voice? Like, yeah, and they're like hamming it up really well. And they ham it up the right amount. They don't make it super cheesy or anything. It's just more of like a very overexcited, I'm eager to meet you or sorry to bother you type of voice.
Yeah, and you mentioned something too. We're going to probably talk about this a lot. The fact that they call it, the white voice, and they keep saying this a lot in this movie. It's the fact that, Cassius, in order for him to actually sell these things, he puts on this white voice, and he gets this idea from Danny Glover, who actually is also in this movie. And so once he starts putting on that white voice, then he becomes like the top salesman. And this is some of the information that I think you actually get from the trailer. So I think this is why it's helpful to know that it is very offensive. I think it's meant to be offensive for a reason, but if you just stop at it being offensive and just as like on the surface level, I don't think you're gonna get all the other stuff that it's trying to tell in this movie, because it's offensive, it's hilarious. It's like, ooh, I'm not sure. Even to the point, so we'll talk a little bit about this in the plot of Cassius when because him and Detroit are dating, and Cassius is talking in his white voice while he's not at work, and that's like kind of sort of affecting their relationship, and says, hey, that's actually changing your identity of who you are, which I also think is like crazy how this writer-director Boots Riley, he's put this in this movie. I'm like, this is amazing that he kind of gets it, or at least it sucks. He knows a lot of people that probably are in the same like scenario. So I think that's what sucks. But.
Yeah, and I think the whole idea of having to change your voice to achieve certain things is a very interesting concept. It definitely means something very specific in this when it comes to black characters having to change their voice to not be who they are to get something accomplished. But I think, like, we've all been there where in order for us to be understood at work a little bit more, we got to change our language a bit, or we got to change our tone of voice. Some people would say in Boston that I have a strong Southern accent. It's kind of for the norm or very subtle where I grew up. And I would actually get different results depending on how I actually spoke to someone. And it's like, I never took it as a negative. It's like, oh, I now have a new skill set I can actually use to make things happen for me.
I like that. I really like what you're. I really like what you're saying here, but
Yeah.
I like that concept because for me, I'm from upstate New York. We don't really have an accent. It's like really displaced all over the place. But I have a lot of family from Jacksonville, Florida, and that definitely is an
Yeah.
accent down there. And so it's interesting because I went to school. I think a lot of you listeners know I went to school for theater, like a lot of different voice acting, lots of different stuff. So a lot of my whatever accents I had is all gone, and I'm able to step into those different roles. And I had back then. I have my Apple voice way back in the day, and I have my training more proper voice, right? And I think it's something to say of when you put on your white voice, and even for me, people have like said that, oh, this person speaks white, right? And I'm like, what does that mean? Exactly, exactly. And I love, oh man, I wish everybody could see. You're like, what the fuck does that mean? I'm like, precisely. What does that mean? Like, is it because I'm proper? Is it how I was raised? Like, because I don't talk hood, whatever that you want to actually say. So it's all that frustration and anger, but then he puts this in this movie, and that's just a part of it. Of it's just something that I couldn't explain, and now he put it in there perfectly. And now, not only did he put it in there perfectly, it says, "Hey, this is what I really mean by putting on your white voice," because literally,
Right.
this is what people have to do. And so I'm glad that he put that in. That was a very impactful thing that he made in this movie, and I'm sure people were probably pissed off and also offended by it. But it's also interesting to know that what if people have like half black, half white? Doesn't matter. Like, there's no such thing as white voice, black voice, gangster, whatever that it is. It's just how you talk, and this also people being people, and your individuality is important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you definitely want to be yourself in your life, and it's definitely comes to the concept of more like when you're put in scenarios in life. I mean, we see this most time when we're working a job, is that yeah, you're going to have to fit into probably a tighter box than you're used to just your everyday life in order to actually get the job done. Because if you don't, then no one's going to not just just not listen to you, but they're not gonna take you seriously unless you say it in a certain way.
Mm-hmm. I think it's also good too because we talked about Lakeith Stanfield, and the more I'm talking about this with you, the more I've actually seen a lot of this in Get Out, which is also crazy to think that movie can actually get better behind other works, is because he actually does put on, literally turns into a white person, right?
Yeah.
Or like a white person goes into his body in Get Out. Sorry for the spoilers for Get Out, but I mean, that's your fault, not mine. But he at first, when we first see him, he's the first person that we meet on the movie Get Out. He's talking on the phone. You can hear that he clearly is like a completely different person. And then when he's like reintroduced a little bit later on in the movie, in this movie, he starts the same, and then he has to put on this facade of this white voice. And then once he put on the facade of the white voice, that's when all his success comes. And so I think that's very interesting. It's a very telling thing of, man, that started in Get Out, and still that's something that he can do. Again, if you haven't seen Atlanta, his character is really, really good in that one too. So,
Yeah.
Lakeith Stanfield, definitely keep making some more movies.
Yeah, one other actor I just wanted to mention, even though he has a very, very small role, I think it's very important, is Terry Crews as Sergio, Cash's uncle. We only see him in, I think, 2 or 3 scenes, but I believe he's the character here to remind us, no matter what craziness you're about to see, this is the impact of the reality of what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
So he's kind of like how we say, like, since Cassius doesn't have a job, he's not able to pay rent, he's not going to have a house, then nobody's going to have a house. And that's kind of like the first moment we have with them. And I think Cassius and Sergio, it plays off very comically, and at the end he's like, Cassius, I'm your motherfucking uncle, give me my rent. And you think it's just like another like Terry Crews like caricature. But the cool thing is here, it's like Terry plays this character very understated. And I think that, and just very earnest. And I think that was necessary for this movie to kind of give us a little bit of ground to come back to. whenever it got really batshit crazy.
I think it's also interesting because I'm looking at this IMDb screen now, and there's only actually 3 people who have the last names in this movie, which I'm curious to know. Cash is Green.
Cash Green.
Exactly,
Money.
right? Or, it could be like young or naive, right? Or they don't know, like green beyond a year sort of thing.
Yeah.
So that could be interpreted by that way. Then the only other person who has a last name is Steve Lift. I don't know how you want to put that. And then Diana
Debauchery.
Yeah. But I think that's the only place there for that.
Debauchery.
Debauchery. But yeah, I think that's actually interesting. I just looked at that. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Any other characters you want to bring up before we move to the visual style of the story?
Those are the ones that really stood out to me. I know there's a couple more characters. I don't know if you wanted to talk to them a little bit, but I also found them to be kind of in the part of the movie that was kind of uninteresting to me as well.
Yeah, I like the Stephen Yeun's character. The name Squeeze. If you don't know Stephen Yeun's from The Walking Dead, or spoiler alert, he used to be. And so his character is Squeeze, and him coming in kind of rallying. I also like that because he reminded me of Sergio's character. That there's real shit actually happening.
Yeah.
In this world, right? This world is not completely fantastical. Like, although people put on a white voice, all the stuff that we talked about right now is real. People actually do that in today's day and age. And so it was another reminder because although you have a couple different storylines happening simultaneously, he's still trying to kind of like unite people, trying to kind of rally together, trying to get them benefits, trying to like create a union at this place so that to make sure we can kind of fight the good fight sort of thing. So I thought that was really, really cool for them to keep that character in here along with Jermaine Fowler's character Salvador, which is his friend.
Yeah.
I don't like
his best friend.
Best friend, yeah. And so I like that there was still, there wasn't anything in this movie that says, oh, Cash is like, going back to your roots and like you have to be like a black character or something like that. Like I'm glad they didn't like go on that route. It was more along the lines of kind of taking care of yourself and like how you want to carry yourself and like still actually being part of a team and like being each other's friends. I thought that was pretty cool and how he ended up kind of abandoning that a little bit later on.
Yeah, and I definitely like how the ending wraps up, and we'll get into that. What it says about Cash's character when he says something about where is he at in life after a lot of crazy shit happens. And yeah, we'll get more into that.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk about the visual style in the story.
Yeah, so this movie, like I said before, it reminded me a lot of movies from like the late 90s, early 2000s that definitely played with visual styles, like any Michel Gondry films or Being John Malkovich, things like that, where they use a lot of different mediums and different setups of staging to give you a good idea of, or like not only humorous, but like kind of get you a little bit more into what your characters are thinking and how they actually perceive different situations. Like I love how whenever Cassius is on a call at Regal View, he just immediately just drops into that person's house. Because one thing, it's like kind of, you can take it either way. Like Cassius is kind of like imagining what his characters are doing at that moment so he can position himself the best way possible to talk to them and get their attention about like Time Life books. It's like a very mundane thing he has to sell to them. Or it could be showing you like the obstacles he has because he doesn't have that visual connection to that person. Mm-hmm. So I thought it was really cool to see how they played with that. To see everything from a guy sitting on the toilet to a couple having sex. Who answers the phone while they're having sex?
You never know, man. The pizza could be coming. You never know.
Possibly. And like that, I just found that to be odd, but I always also thought it was very humorous, but also very telling at the same time.
I love the fact that, there was one sequence that, he drops in and there's a woman who's grieving and they have a model of... stick to the script, right? I think this was called. Yeah. So like they have a model to like stick to the script, and that's like verbatim. So many jobs that's on there. It doesn't matter what it is, and he was still trying to sell stuff to this lady when she even said that, hey, I'm not financially available to do that. But I also think that was pretty cool just for us, because they could have easily shown like a phone call. and then being hung up, and that's fine. But in order to kind of take it to the next level, again, we're branching out and like really having this creative niche, and this is what I really really liked about Boots Riley's like directorial and like how he created that. I don't think I've ever seen that before. Like that's actually really cool. I really wanted more of that. I'm glad they kept doing it in a lot of different sort of areas too. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think like his visual style just becomes more telling, like to bring more of their characters out as well. Like especially with Detroit because she is an artist, a visual artist, and so they use visual elements to kind of have her emotions shown and stuff because she's very lively and energetic, but she's not always. She has a good poker face. Is the best way I could describe it.
Yeah.
That you couldn't really tell is she happy or sad right now until she's just super angry about something. And I love how what they did with her earrings. Her earrings always changing and showing like a kind of mood she has when she's talking to Cassius for the most part or a certain individual that they would say like some very like dark, twisted messages. I forget exactly like what some of the earrings said, but some of them were like, "Say this to me and I'll kill you" type of thing. And,
Yeah.
and it's just more of like showing like what's on her actual mind in a conversation, rather than what's actually the words coming out of her mouth during that time too.
What else you got?
I found like let's see here, the claymation video that Steve Lift shows to Cassius.
I forgot about that video.
First of all, it's like a straight up knock against Michelle Gondry, like to the point of the director's name. But like the weird claymation video that's just done in a shitty way, just to talk about this whole idea of the next evolution of mankind being these half horse, half human equisapiens.
Yes.
And how is it going to benefit humanity and everything? And everything's like a big positive message. And the whole idea of like Worry Free is a company that basically their whole business concept is indentured servitude.
Yes.
Because it's like, come work for us and we take care of you. We give you free housing, free food. You have a job. You don't have to worry about anything. It's worry free. It's like they basically enslaved millions of people.
I love it because it starts out as it's something in the background of like worry free, and we start seeing that it's commercials. And you see that there's protesting about the commercial itself. That's kept going throughout the movie. But I was for me, I was like, okay, like I wonder if he's gonna do this. And people were talking about like maybe I should join, like maybe I should do that. And some of their commercials are you have like four grown people in like orange jumpsuits that are in bunk beds basically, and like yeah, we're having a good time. Like I have not a care in the world. Yeah, and I like the food. So I thought that was really cool for them to actually tie it all together at the end. I'm like, oh shit, that's awesome. I didn't even think about that. And so literally, and this is the scene that we're going to be bringing up is they are turning people into horse people, equisapiens, and who are much stronger and like taller and have
work longer hours.
Exactly, and they have big
longer dicks.
Longer dicks. And I think that's awesome. And so yeah, so let's talk a little bit about that. This sequence here, the conversation between Cassius and Steve Lift. In their office.
So yeah, or I'll even start with like Steve Lift's house because it kind of like entering Steve Lift's house is entering like his reality distortion field. So you enter into Steve Lift world. It's an amusement park all about Steve Lift, and so when you walk in, it's like crazy cocaine orgies happening in one room. A bunch of people are in another room just hearing Steve tell crazy stories, and you see people in another room just sitting there looking bored, and they're like saying they're excited anyway. And like it gets to a point where like when Cassius is there for the first time, he's been through a lot. There's some things we'll get into that he's been through up until then, but there's like people watching a YouTube video of him constantly, and then just the fakest laughs happening through it. But also, one of the most, I would say, I mean, I laughed at it, but also I found it very unnerving. It's like kind of like that uncomfortable laughter. Is the whole thing when Steve says, "Hey, what rap do you know?" and to Cassius, and he's like, Cassius, don't you rap? And Cassius is just like, hey, I don't rap.
Actually, don't.
I don't know how to rap.
So I loved this scene a lot.
It is amazing scene.
Oh, so good. And I mean, so the reason why I love this scene is it's like the stereotypical, this person's black, so they must run fast, or they must rap, or they must do something like creative, right, or play.
It's like making a stereotype out of that person that you just met.
Yeah, but then it pushes it to the next level, and I love the movies that goes to a point and says, okay, this is how people are going to get uncomfortable. Again, utilizing the white voice, right? People are going to be uncomfortable. That's going to be offensive. But then how can I take it to the next level to fully understand what's happening? So in this sequence, it takes it to the level of, oh hey, you can rap, right? Like, you have to be an rap. Oh, go rap. And he's like, no. He's like, no, you're gonna rap. He's like, no, I won't. And the screen cuts away, and it got me because I was like, oh, thank God he's not gonna rap. And then sure enough, he's up there, and starts rapping, and he's trying to do some stuff, and he's bombing, and everybody's like literally like staring at him, and he's like, And the best part happens, I think, here, is when he goes and says, nigga. And everybody's like, yeah! They're all cheering back and forth. And I'm like, oh, Boots Riley, you son of a bitch. Yeah. Oh, people are going to fucking hate this. But thank you for doing that.
Yeah, and what makes it a cool scene is, like, that can be broken down in so many elements. Because there is the one thing of, like, just stereotyping Cassius as soon as you meet him. But also, it's like, what's going to feed that crowd that believes in stereotypes, but just the dumbest, most stereotypical, it's showing like, oh, this is what rap is literally these two words.
Yes.
And if he says that, it's going to get a pop.
Yeah. And I wish that we can have an entire podcast about this one sequence. So I think we can have an entire podcast about Steve Lift's house and every sequence that happens in his house, but we can't. I do want to also mention that I think it was another commentary that talks about modern music in this day and age right now, because a lot of even for right now, and I could be sounding like an old timer, but I don't give a shit. Like the mumble rap, and literally you have no idea what a person says. Or you just see people just repeating just the chorus of a song, which I think he was also putting into this one here of like, oh, I can just say 2-3 words and everybody's going to be like, yeah, I don't even know what this person says, but I still like it, sort of thing. And this is how you're going to actually entertain this crowd, which still happened to be not black people, right? It was actually a bunch of other races, but there was no black people there.
Right, except for Mr. Blank.
Exactly. Mr. Blank and Cassius were the only two black people there. And the other thing I do want to mention is that any time that we are in Steve Lift's house, again, I think we really want to talk about this, is that you can only use your white voice there. So once you go up and, in the part of this movie, Cassius gets, like, promoted all the way up, he only can use his white voice. He can only use his white voice at Steve Lift's house to a certain point when things get a little bit more serious. And so I think that's just another way to show of, Cassius is slowly but surely like losing more and more of his identity in this movie.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wonder if you have a take on this, because I'm still like thinking about it, like when Mr. Blank tells Cassius he should go see Steve in his office, that's when we actually hear Mr. Blank's real voice. Mm-hmm. The only time we hear it. And I'm still like, so why did he change to his real voice to tell him about go see Steve?
I think at that point, because and this is what I love about his character, Mr. Blank, is I thought he was just a stereotypical, like, doesn't give a shit dude, and that he was either kind of bought into this, but he then switches out and does his normal voice after that nigga scene, because I think he also kind of felt sorry, and I think he was also kind of feeling it a bit too. And so he knew the path that Cassius was kind of going down. But, I mean, I have a couple different points here, but I'm wondering if he was kind of feeling bad about that. It was like, yeah, it's fucked up. I know it's fucked up, but we get a lot of money, and this is,
Yeah, this is the king.
Exactly. This is how I choose to live my life. It's fucked up, but I'd rather choose it this way than another way. Or do you think he was tricking him, and you knew he was gonna he knew that he was gonna fuck it up, because he even said, "Don't fuck it up for all of us." He knew he was going to fuck this up, and so he sent them into the office for that reason. And again, going from the Cassius Green line because he was so like young and naive. Do you think he like kind of jumped the gun instead of like having like Steve Lift was saying that, hey, let's watch this video. No, I'm gonna show you this video first. Do you think he was like tricking him, or do you think he was on his side, Mr. Blank?
That's a good question. I mean, I think with Mr. Blank's character, I mean, he definitely is like kind of mentoring Cassius when he becomes a power caller, and like he's the person that Cassius naturally gravitates to because that's who Cassius saw himself wanting to be every single time he goes into Regal View. He sees him well dressed with his bowler hat and fancy mustache and his eye patch for whatever reason. Go into that elevator and he's like, that's what I want to be. And I think it's a kind of a telling of like, all right, to be that, I have to give up all this stuff about me. And am I willing to do that to make it happen? Because you actually start to see that affect his real world life as well. And you probably had scenarios where when you get different jobs or gotten promotions and stuff, people start treating you differently, or you start seeing things from a different perspective, and other people can't understand why you see it that way now. And I think it kind of goes back to like growth as a person, that you do have times where you make choices in life that you need to decide, is it worth the sacrifice or not? Because I think every single choice has some type of sacrifice to it, whether it's a very small one or if it's like, even though I really want this new position or I want this new location, you're losing something to gain something else. And is that gain worth it?
Yeah. I mean...
And I think with Mr. Blank talking to Cassius in that moment, with his real voice, he's kind of like, all right, this is me in the real world right now. This is the real me talking to you. That, yeah, you got to make a choice right now. And that choice, it's going to reflect not only on who you are, but also reflect back to me.
Yeah.
Just because there is that social community connection that they have too.
But I guess the one thing, like we can talk about the fact that when Steve Lift and Cassius have a conversation of like showing the video. I also wonder, so the next scene goes, Cassius goes in and he finds Steve and like Steve's putting down like a spiral of cocaine.
We think it's cocaine.
Well, we think it's cocaine, yeah. On an actual plate, and so they start talking. And I guess I need to maybe like, well, I'm probably going to watch this again, but does he offer it to him, or does he say, hey, watch this video first before he offered him that? And I wonder if he had like a choice, because Mr. Blank's not an Equisapien, right? And so I'm wondering, like, did he send him in that office to turn him into that or not?
Yeah. Or does Mr. Blank know what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Well, does he even know about the Equisapien?
He does know about it.
He does know about it?
Yeah, he knew. I assume, right? I don't think it's like... I guess it's not super clear. I assume that he knew about it because he also knew about all the other shit that was happening of them basically selling slaves, selling slavery and selling like manual labor. It's like they're selling the Equisapiens to like other countries and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I thought he knew, but then I guess he doesn't.
It's never clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They definitely know that they're selling humans into slavery, indentured servitude.
Yeah.
That's
well, they call them making contracts for other companies to use the labor force.
Yes, exactly.
that's the way the movie plays.
Yeah, and then he's like, "Oh, what?"
Ridiculous.
So he knows that, but I'm curious if he actually knows about the Equisapien. So that's a good point.
Yeah.
But there also is a cure.
Supposedly.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because like in the video, it is saying like, well, no, Steve tells them, like, the reason why I showed him the whole plan for the Equisapiens in this weird claymation video that he made for it, and it's just showing, like, how disconnected from reality Steve Lift is. He would actually make his plan for the next evolution of his company out of weird claymation characters. that with like the benefits of being an Equisapien is like it's only a 5-year contract. You get a 9-figure salary, and you get a giant horse cock.
Yeah.
And it's like within 5 years, I'm sure we'll have a cure. It's not a guarantee.
It's so ridiculous. And so we even see Cassius like stumble in what we thought was a bathroom, but he actually sees and kind of runs into
The hallway to Steve Lift's office is amazing because it's all it is are doors that are different shades of green. And then Steve Lift tells him, Cassius has to go to the bathroom. Steve Lift tells him, oh, it's the avocado door on the left.
Yeah.
And he opens up one of the green doors that he thinks it is, and he runs into the first Equisapien scene, and it's like, kill me now.
Help us, please! Which apparently is played by Forrest Whitaker. So that's hilarious. I'm not sure why, but thank you for that.
Yeah. And then, it's totally a freaky moment for Cassius, and then he runs out, he runs right into Steve, and he's like, that's not avocado. It's fucking olive.
Yeah.
That's all he says about it.
Like, this way, he's like, how am I supposed to know? He's like, this all would have been explained in the video. I thought it was ridiculous. So, we definitely have, these people at Worry Free that are turning people into horse people, which is kind of crazy. What else you got?
So I would say, there's a lot of cool, differences between a lot of social movements happening in here. Mm-hmm. So we have the the protest movement called Left Eye, which are kind of like more militant protesters and everything. And I find that they come off as very stereotypical of what people would think of Antifa and things like that. And it's very corny. There's this whole video that happens because the leader of the Left Eye movement says, have a Coke and smile, bitch. And throws it and it hits Cassius in the head while he's going to work.
Great.
And, every time after that, it goes viral for some reason. And that's, it's so telling because of, social media and just things that people choose to be entertained by. Mm-hmm. That this video of him being hit in the head with a Coke, people find is the funniest shit on the planet. And so he starts walking down the street and they call, oh, it's the have a Coke and smile bitch guy.
And he has this rap that's basically on his head for the entire
the rest of the movie. And the blood is getting bigger.
Yeah, which I thought was a thing too. I thought that was something that they did on purpose. So that was pretty cool. But I thought that was an actual direct reference from Kylie Jenner commercial.
Yeah. I didn't really get that.
But... I mean, that's what I was...
really?
Have a Coke and smile was, I thought, a direct reference when,
the Kylie Jenner Pepsi.
Yes.
Thing.
I thought that for sure, and I was like, ooh, I kind of hope it was. I thought that was great, but I don't know.
Yeah. I'm not connected to, social media outrage that much, so.
I
know people got crazy over that commercial, but I looked at it, I was like, it's a commercial.
Yeah. I don't give a shit, but I'm wondering if it was because I think some of the verbiage in that commercial was
very similar to that.
Yeah.
Gotcha. But also when it comes to a social movement like Left Eye, but also we look at Squeeze's move to actually organize the telecallers into their own union. But then we also get Detroit's artist show, which is visual performance, but also a lot of visual art as well. She has this whole series of art that are different cutouts of the continent of Africa with different things. They're colored differently, or they're used with different mediums. I think there's one that's just skull and bones and stuff. They all look really visually exciting and stuff. And they all have different meanings to what it's representation of what's going on with Africa and how people treat Africa, which I thought was really cool. That there's many ways people see Africa, but they're still seeing it as one thing, and that one thing's happening to the whole continent.
Yeah.
When that's totally not the case in real life. And then her whole performance piece that she has at her art show, that when we have her white voice as a British lady going around when she's trying to sell a piece of art, which is also telling that even though she's supposed to be that character that is like, um, for lack of better terms, more on the left side of politics than Cassius or his other friends and stuff. That she is very like, freedom for all, very social minded person. She even joins Left Eye and does some vandalism as well.
I thought she was always actually a part of it.
I think
I thought she was.
she probably was, but like you'll see like smudges of black paint under her left eye, and then she wipes it away really quickly. That her performance piece, which is like throw sheep's blood at me while I recite this phrase from The Last Dragon. It's hilarious.
Well, it's sheep's blood, batteries, cell phone, like broken cell phones.
Yeah.
The fact that I was like The Last Dragon, like what?
And yeah, like when it comes to like what the Left Eye movement's doing alongside with what Detroit's doing, it comes off as very weird, very. I mean, I see it as dumb and silly, and like trying to make a point, but at an exaggerated moment where you forget about what the point is all about. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's very telling that Cassius is like, stop, you don't need to be doing this, because like yeah, things can be better, but this is not the way you go about it. What are you doing to yourself? And she's like, it's part of the art. And it's like also showing that, hey, art has a business side to it. So you are going to wheel and deal, even though you say your expression is what's going to change the world. There's also that business side to it. There's also is your expression really the thing that's going to drive change? It might bring awareness, but probably it's not going to be the driver of change. Mm-hmm. Whereas we see Squeeze's union organization, it's more grounded in reality. It's more of like, it doesn't really get to the craziness of Left Eye. It gets to be like he's talking to his friends in a bar and saying like, hey, how about we all tomorrow stop calling people all at this time and get up and just say, fuck Regal View.
What was it? Phones down.
Phones down. And yeah, we definitely have that moment, but we also see that moment becomes where they're standing and blocking the way of the power callers and everything, and you get these stormtroopers basically
oh my gosh,
brutally knock people out of the way in order for the power callers to get in. And once someone actually hits one of the power callers, you see that it's actually one like. All regular people think it's either a funny joke on a video or it's like, oh, are concerned. And then the power callers are like, oh, whatever. Yeah, it's another day at the office type of thing.
Crazy.
And then it all ends up as an all-out riot at the end where Cassius gets his friends from his neighborhood that are on the football team that apparently they've been on the football team for like 20 years or something.
That's all they did? Yeah.
And they set up like these brick statues that Detroit made and to stop them. And they start to stop them and it breaks out into a full-on riot. And so it shows like kind of like when you meet force with force, yeah, it's going to get ugly and nasty and everything. But hopefully it's going to be worth it and that the results are going to be what you were striving for. Mm-hmm. And one thing I really appreciated about it was at the end, Cassius decides not to be a power caller anymore. He decides to go back to Regal View telecalling. It's not that, hey, I changed the world and I'm in a brand new world with sunshine and rainbows and everything. It's more like, yeah, I'm going to go back to my old job. I got a more humble car. I don't have this crazy sports car that I bought. I gave it to my friend and he loves it. Sure, he'll have a good time with it until it runs down. And so like, yeah, it's like, yeah, it's a next step of improvement. And I'm about to get like a small apartment and stuff. I'm back in my uncle's house, and I cleaned up my place. It looks nicer.
I like how because the movie opens up with him opening up the garage door and like that was like an accident thing that shouldn't have happened. Whereas now he then put in the furniture that actually opens up with it. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and it and like when it ends, it's like. Cassius is not, well, before the actual ending, the moment where you think like, hey, he's kind of learned his lesson is more of like, hey, I am going to do well at this job and continue to see where it leads me.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than try to take the first opportunity that comes to me, kind of weigh options a little bit more. Very rational way of ending a hero's journey, so to speak.
Yeah. And then, what happens at the end?
Oh, and then all of a sudden, Cassius turns into an Equisapien and shit runs crazy again. He goes to Steve's house, and him and the rest of the Equisapiens knock down his door and, like, go after him.
I was like, oh, okay, it's not too bad. It's not too bad. And I was, like, again, like, this fucking movie surprised the hell out of me, and it kept doing it, because it was like, oh, there was a part of me that's like, oh, I guess he's fine. He's not going to turn. He's good. Even when in Steve office, he's like, "Is that what you gave me?" He's like, "No, man. What did I give you?" He's like, "It's pure." Right? Did he actually say it was cocaine, or he said it was pure?
Yeah, he said it's like 100% pure cocaine.
Yes, it's pure cocaine. He was like, "Oh, okay." And at the end of this movie, we're ending on a happy ending. Cassius is back with Detroit, and they even had a falling out of them kind of breaking up and kind of getting back together. So he closes the garage door, and all of a sudden he's like, "Ow, ow!" Like, start holding his face, and I was like, "Oh, I wonder what's wrong." And then he turns around to the camera, and his nostrils are just huge, and I was like, "Holy shit! He is gonna turn into an Equisapien, son of a bitch!" So I thought that was great. That's such a great kind of additive on that one. And this movie just kept surprising me, from turn to turn. That was pretty cool. So talk to me about this TV show that everybody's addicted to.
So, I mean, it goes back to that entertainment thing. So we have the YouTube video that Cassius is in, that billions of people watch. But the number one TV show in the U.S. is I Got the Shit Kicked Out of Me, where people go on here to just get the shit kicked out of them, and it's kind of like cutting a deal. It's like, kick the shit out of me if you let me do this, type of thing we find out. But we just see it in the background for the most part, and people are just getting punched in the face, kicked in the nuts, kicked in the stomach, and just like terrible things happening to them. So Cassius loses his phone when he's at Steve's house, and he finds that the Equisapiens actually put out a video and messaged it to, or did they message it to his new phone, or did they message it to Detroit?
Detroit.
They messaged it to Detroit,
Yeah.
and you see all these Equisapiens saying, "Help us, we're in trouble, we're in prison."
Like, "Get back there!" And you see Steve's walk on the video. He's like, "Get back there!" He's like insulting them.
Oh yeah, and he's like saying like
something.
He was saying something about them and just like degrading them and just treating them like animals, or Equisapiens, I guess.
Yeah.
And that video, he's like, I gotta release this video to the public and everything, and it's like he tries to do the normal channels thing, like release it to the news and everything, and people are like, oh, they won't believe you and stuff like that, and just turning them down. So he's like, well, what do people watch the most? This stupid TV show. And so he has to go on there, get the shit kicked out of him, have feces dumped on him.
Yeah.
And eventually they actually just play the video raw in front of their billions of people audience. And so after that, that's when Steve's empire starts to crumble. Mm-hmm. That it's less like, hey, you can't do this. This is inhumane. Why do these things exist? What is going on here? Type of thing. And so that's when we start to see that Worry Free starts to crumble as a company. And that Regal View becomes its own, like, just regular telemarketer company again. Power callers, I guess, don't exist anymore because they don't have Worry Free as a client anymore. And they start to, things start to get an equilibrium. That's where we get to that normal ending before we get to the batshit crazy ending.
The fact that the only two things that were on TV were the news and I got the shit kicked out of me, I think was another sort of commentary on, like, TV today. And I think it was another thing to say, if you're not watching news or something else is fucking crazy that's going to happening. And the closest thing I can think of is like that Wipeout show that's always sometimes on TV. Like, yeah. You have like some nonsense that everybody's going to be addicted to watching, and nobody's actually watching the news to figure out like what's happening. So I think that was another thing. Maybe I'm reading to something too much, but there's a lot of political stuff. There's a lot of like commentary of our world in today's society all over, and Detroit is like a perfect example in this movie, from her art, from her earrings, from just everything she does, even her costumes and some of her
Right.
t-shirts and stuff too. Everything about that character, I think, was meant to be, what's happening sort of.
It's
in the
kind of
background.
like, I support this movement. Like my hashtag Me Too T-shirt kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think it's also very telling because we think about like you talk a lot to a lot of people nowadays, and they're like, "Yeah, I watch the news. I watch the Daily Show," which is a comedic entertainment show. That they definitely report on news events and mostly political events, but priorities there is comedy and humor and entertainment. It's not necessarily the serious news reporter that you see on like CNN or MSNBC. So I think also that I got the shit kicked out of me is kind of like
Could be.
having a jab at like those kind of shows
Yeah.
as well. Just
Yeah.
like a variety show trying to be the actual news for you compared to regular news, or you're actually getting the real news off of something that's meant to be entertainment.
That's a good point.
Yeah. One other thing I would add, even though I do like, the whole concept of worry free in the company, I kind of wanted it to be kept in the background. That would actually, and we could still have the character of Steve Lift, but I think the whole idea of worry free is so crazy that if it was kept in the background, we focus more on Regal View and like had a couple more scenes of the of the unionizing happening and like the union versus the middle management. I kind of wanted to have more of that story told rather than go into this power caller realm, which is when you go to the power caller center, it's definitely totally different than the Regal View Center where Regal View is just a line of desks and phones and everything, where power callers, like everybody has their own glass bubble and like bottled water, and they sit in these fancy couches and stuff, and they have one client, which is worry free, and it's to call all these places to make these multi-million-dollar deals for the labor force that worry free provides. And I found that maybe worry free was a little became too much of the focus at the end, and it should have stayed with the unionizing and Regal View for the most part. And I would say like it was great to have Terry Crews's Sergio, like especially like the scene coming up when he felt like even though Cassius started to help him out with the rent and everything and making sure it's paid on time, there was a point that that Sergio says like I'm moving, I gotta go. Because it's not always about the money. There's more factors into it than meeting your rent. And so he packs his car, he leaves, and I forget what he says to Cassius, but I found it to be one of the best scenes in the movie that he's like, it's not always about the material things. There's also a piece of me. Can I feel like I'm myself here? And he's like at a point where it's like, your family, but you don't feel like family anymore, and that's why he feels like he's got to kind of go now.
That's a good point. I thought he joined Worry Free.
No,
They were just leaving.
they were just leaving.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
You talked a little bit about the music.
Yeah, so the music was done by The Coup, which is Boots Riley's band. And it just felt like there was just one song throughout the whole movie, and I was hoping to hear like more songs by him. I like that one song that they play, but I think it's just overplayed too much. And I think they should have had a little bit more dynamics to the music throughout it.
They did play a Tune Yards song. I'm not sure how many, but Tune Yards. If you've ever heard of this, like Google. Okay, I'll play it after. But everybody should Google it because there's songs in there that literally is like, ooh, this fits perfectly with how crazy this movie is, because it starts off as a regular song, then it gets all super crazy of like the music itself, then it goes back, and there's a lot of different like articles and like hints of like just different stages of craziness in their music, which I like actually their music, but it's also interesting because it's like, oh, that's sort of what this movie feels like too at some points. Yeah, what else you got? Anything else before our lasting thoughts or any things you want to talk about?
That's pretty much all I had on my mind. Just seeing if you had anything else you wanted to add, like in terms of just the visuals or the stories they were trying to tell.
I like the reoccurring of like different things that was kept happening in the movie. Like you saw his car, right?
Yeah.
And his car was like super broke down and messed up. But there was a lot of repetitious. So I'm wondering if that was done on purpose because he will go to certain areas and do the same things. He will see the football players and he will still drive, and even the repetitions of Detroit would enter the scene and like her different earrings. Like those are things that was happening at the same time. There's even like that montage with Johnny and Cassius Green and how he's like started doing his white voice and getting all this success. And so you start seeing that here, like the light will go off every time and like
people Johnny's just like
they do like high fives, right? I like that style of it. That there's something about the repetitiveness. There we go of. Saying like telling the stories in circles sort of thing, how it always comes back. So I thought that was kind of pretty cool because that also sort of repetitious thing that I'm talking about is kind of like a spiral too, right? And I don't know if it was on purpose, but you see when Cassius first does coke, I think he does it in a spiral, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I'm wondering if that was on purpose. Because even like he starts off in his garage, he gets all the way back up, and then the movie ends with him back in that same garage again too. So I'm wondering if like there was something along the lines of like spirals. I'll be curious to watch this movie again to see if there's any other spirals or repetitiveness that was happening with that. So I thought that was a really interesting way to tell a story. Also keep it visually pleasing because it's something that was always changing. The use of color in this movie, the costumes or the attire in this movie is also phenomenal. I mentioned Tessa Thompson's Detroit was great at all of her like what she was actually using, but like the suits, Mr. Blanks, like everything that it was using, I thought was pretty cool. Even to the point where once we're inside Realty View, no, what's the name of Regal View? Yeah. Once we're inside Regal View, it's very like drab, like very like bland, like plain colors. Once they get all the way up to the power collar sort of area, then it's like a little bit more brighter. It's like glass on there. It's like very, very clean, and I like the different locations. In Steve's house, it was like all different colors and lots of different craziness that was happening there too. So I like that use of colors. I'm sure there's also like a deeper meaning that I just didn't read into just yet, but I'm sure if I would have watched it again, I'm probably going to get some more out of it. But just like some of the images in here, I think even when the bitch have a Coke and smile, like throwing the bottle and like cracking his head open, and how people like were selling that as a thing now. I just think it's another commentary on just like so much stuff that's happening today in society that people are like, oh, that should be funny, right? And it's like, no, it shouldn't be, but who knows, right? There's always that he would say something, and at least for me, I'm like, man, I'm not entirely sure how I should take that, but I think that's the point of it, right? Yeah. I'm showing you something new. You probably don't know, yes or no, right? You're kind of sitting in that middle area. It could offend you. It also could be laughing about it too. But you at least get to that point of you can start asking those questions like, oh shit, how am I supposed to feel about this? And maybe I need to like learn more about what's happening in my society. So I thought it was pretty cool. It definitely kind of asked a lot of questions, what I thought was pretty cool. It answered all the questions I needed to know in the movie, which was great, but it's also getting me to ask more questions about like myself and just society and like my identity as a whole. And it's curious, some of the things that I do. Am I changing myself? Like, in my caches at some point? And like, do I step out and do a white voice? Like, there's a lot of questions I had. I was like, oh shit, this movie is important. And that's why I'm glad that we can review it. I really hope that, the rest of our guys, they're probably going to watch this movie and like, holy shit. I'm like, yeah. I went to Twitter immediately. It was like, I need to talk to this. And random people, because I tweeted to the movie, and random people started like talking to me about it, so that was pretty cool.
Are you an Equisapien?
No. Mm-hmm. I do have some spiral coke in the back, though. We can try it out and see what happens. Is my nostrils getting... You could have just asked me if your nostrils getting bigger. Well, I didn't know. What you got for your lasting thoughts here?
I enjoyed this movie. I think it's definitely visually creative, and it's got some great performances that definitely worth seeing, especially Lakeith Stanfield, fantastic leading man in this movie. Mm-hmm. I think a lot, like with a lot of these style movies, It's just that it's not about giving you answers, and the story is not as fleshed out as you probably want it to be, but there's different parts of it that'll be good conversation starters, just like we've had today. And it's and I think I wonder, was Boots Riley, was he trying to state a certain message here? Because there's tons of stuff in here. Like you said, this does require another viewing to probably see everything in terms of symbolism or just themes that are going on in this movie to kind of just filter out and compartmentalize and see what is this movie all about too. And I find that I hope that people don't take it as like, oh, these are the answers, we need to unionize and that's going to make everything much better. It's more about like being yourself, which I think is the big overall theme. Is like, be yourself, go after what you think will make you better, but also weigh your options when you're ready to move to the next step in your life. And are the losses or the sacrifices you're going to make to get to that point, is it something too important to give up versus something that, yeah, it's okay to cast it aside so I can actually get to a different place that I want to be as well. And so definitely go see it, and I definitely want to see what Boots Riley does next.
I can't agree more with all things you actually said. I mean, I was very, very curious about watching this movie. I think I was really excited just because of the poster art that I've seen. I think I've seen at some point. And I was like, oh, this looks interesting. And I'm just glad that he was himself. I hope he was himself, being original, making an original work. It could have been very, very easy to make this movie and talk about Cassius having a white voice, finding success from there, becoming the top. It could have been a very easy movie that he could have made, but I think kind of ramping it up, putting in the Equisapiens, putting in the worry-free, putting in this stuff that people may think is ridiculous, but if once it's applied to some of the shit that's happening for right now, maybe not so much, right? There's some companies that will kind of put you up, kind of give you housing, a hotel, and you're basically signing your life away. And so and there's certain jobs and kind of careers that do that. And it's like, yeah, they may not be physically changing you to horse people, but kind of is, and so I think...
We have a mutual friend that just got sent to France for 3 weeks.
Exactly, right? So it's just like, oh, damn, I think, he cranked it up a lot, and I was really, really appreciative of that. Again, I really like the fact that, making movies that's really asking me, start asking questions about yourself and, your identity. And once you can start making these things that's completely different than everything else, that's when it becomes, impactful. This movie may lose a lot of people. I think people are going to receive this movie very, very poorly.
Because they'll be like, oh, they're saying that, and that's not... It's either like, oh, well, I mean, if there's a white voice, what about the black voice type of thing? And they might bring up that argument, and that's not the point of it.
Exactly. So I'm super curious, if people didn't like this movie, I'd love to talk to them, ask them questions of why. If it's something like, oh, I was offended by some of the content, I'm going to be like, well, you have to grow up because there's worse shit that happened in the world today. He's just trying to bring it out to light. So I'm curious. I'm actually curious. If you hated this movie or somebody hated this movie, definitely let me know. I would love to talk about this movie more. I'm probably going to go watch it again whenever I get some more time. Probably this week actually. So I'm pretty pumped about that. And with that, we are the Down in Front podcast. Thanks for hanging out with us. Sorry to bother you, but
sorry to bother you, Warren, but I had to just mention one last scene that's amazing is when Cassius does become a power collar and he goes to talk to his friend Sal again, and when they're in front of the picket lines, that they're given the most positive insults to one another.
Oh, that was so great! Oh my gosh!
Well, you look like you're doing well.
You too. I am. You look nice. Oh yeah, you too. New shoes? Yeah. That was fucking great. Oh, what a good call out. Oh my gosh, I love that scene. Yeah. There's probably so many other small tidbit scenes too that we didn't talk about. Even the fact that Terry Crews has hair in this movie. Why? Why? He could have easily been bald, but whatever.
Yep.
We have been the Down in Front podcast. Bradley, where can people find more of your work?
You can find me using my southern voice on Twitter at Brilund, Brilund, And you can also find me on Instagram every once in a blue moon, putting up a mini movie review at I am Bryland. And I'm also the host of the Gamescast. We're playing through Beyond Two Souls. That's the name of the game. Twitch.tv/Down and From Podcast.
And you can find more of our work, so definitely check out our website, downandfrontpodcast.com, where we're going to be putting in our video teasers. We put in a lot of information. Also, check us out over on Instagram. We actually missed out today because we were going back to back, but we do like sort of short, sort of like live sort of reviews. We try to keep them spoilers free as much as possible, but kind of quick things so that, at least under a minute or so you can watch this and says, should you check this movie out or not. We're on Facebook, so facebook.com/downandfrontpodcast, on Twitter, _DAFP. Also, if you like what we do, you definitely kind of want to support and kind of hang out with us on our actual chat. You can become a Patreon, patreon.com/downandfrontpodcast. It actually joins you to be on our Discord channel where we talk about movies. And right now, one of the hosts of Fear Boners, Abbott's at San Diego Comic-Con. So he's like been blowing us up about, all the new stuff and all the new stuff that's coming out. So it also is pretty cool. So definitely check out more of our work. Thank you so much for tuning in. Stay tuned. Next week we're going to look to review Mission Impossible.
Mission Impossible Fallout.
Yeah, which it's like the 8th one of those. 5th or something like that.
Around one of those numbers.
One of those numbers, yeah.
Tom Cruise.
But thanks so much for tuning in. Sorry to bother you. And we will see you later. I'm waving if you can't tell.
Good night.
Good night.
Where's Cock?
Oh man, it's like almost 8 o'clock.